Joy Behar sat upright at the far end of the panel desk, her fingers pressed tightly together, knuckles white. Harrison Ford's name had just been announced, and the applause roared like a stadium. But backstage, tension coiled like a live wire. Producers exchanged glances. The floor manager mouthed to a PA, "This one's going sideways." And in that moment, before he even appeared, something felt off. Then there he was, Harrison Ford, the legend, the icon. The man who had weathered 5 decades of public life with a half-smirk and an eyebrow raise. He walked out onto the stage. With that unmistakable Leonhoff cowboy, half-reluctant Starand, offered the audience a tired, charming wave. He looked good, too good. Crisp leather jacket, soft denim, a silver mane that refused to dim with time. But something about his eyes, alert, guarded. He sat down, nodding once toward the hosts. Whoopi welcomed him like an old friend. Sonny cracked a joke about Indiana Jones using a walker, laughter, warmth for a fleeting second. The tension melted, and then there was Joy. Silent, poised, watching. Ford didn't notice. Or maybe he did. Maybe that's why, as he adjusted his mic and took a sip from the mug in front of him, he scanned the table with just a flicker of hesitation. Before we go any further, if you're watching this right now, you already feel it. 2. The crackle in the air, the slow burn under the smiles. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this plays out. So, like this video, share it with someone who won't believe how real it gets, and hit that subscribe button because what starts as a promo interview becomes one of the most unforgettable implosions in daytime TV history. The conversation began innocently enough. Whoopi asked about the new film, a dramatic survival thriller set in the Arctic. Ford leaned in, comfortable, animated even. He spoke about the training, the stunts, the challenge of working in sub-zero temperatures at his age. He cracked jokes. The audience laughed. The hosts smiled, all except one. Joy Behar hadn't said a word. She sat back, chin slightly lifted, one eyebrow arched. And then, with the most casual venom anyone had ever seen spill before 11 a.m., she tilted her head and said, "Well, Harrison, before we get lost in your tundra stories, I think it's time we talk about the hypocrisy." You could hear the air leave the room. Literally, Ford blinked, still smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me?" he asked. Joy leaned forward slightly, clasping her hands in front of her. "The hypocrisy. You know the whole eco-warrior with a hangar full of private jets thing?" Sonny's head whipped around so fast it almost hit the mic arm. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I came here to talk about the film," Ford said evenly. "And I came here to talk about integrity," Joy replied, her voice sharp, surgical. "You stand in front of cameras, speak at climate summits, and then burn enough fuel in a year to power a small country." The audience didn't know whether to clap or gasp. A few murmurs bubbled up. A lone ooh escaped from the back. Ford inhaled slowly, visibly raining in a reaction. "Joy, I think you're oversimplifying something very complex." "No, I think I'm simplifying it perfectly," she shot back. And just like that, the mask slipped. The image of Harrison Ford, the smooth, untouchable star, started to twitch. "I've spent a lifetime advocating for environmental change," he said, "long before it was trendy, before half the people who talk about it now even knew what carbon emissions were." And yet, Joy interjected, pulling out a neatly printed sheet from a manila folder beneath the desk. "You've logged over 45 private flights in the last calendar year. That's not speculation. That's FAA data." Whoopi visibly flinched. Sonny's eyes widened. Even the production team shifted uneasily. "Are we seriously doing this?" Ford said, voice low. "Dangerous? Double quotes?" "Yes, we are," Joy snapped. "Because people like you get away with performative activism while the rest of us get called radical for asking corporations to recycle." Ford sat back, jaw tightening. "I fly for personal and professional reasons," he said, the veneer of calm just barely holding. "I also donate millions to environmental causes, fund carbon offset programs, and work with conservation teams in 5 countries. "Oh, how generous of you," Joy said, voice soaked in sarcasm. "So long as you keep writing checks, you get to keep torching the ozone." The audience was stunned. This wasn't a gotcha moment. It was a direct assault, executed with surgical precision. "You want to paint me as a hypocrite to score points?" Ford asked. No, Joy said, rising a little from her chair. I want to hold you accountable. The tension was unbearable. You could feel the split-screen moment happening. Liv Harrison Ford, America's icon, backed into a corner. Joy Behar, the firebrand refusing to blink. Ford's voice dropped a register. You're confusing activism with sainthood. I'm not perfect, but I do more than most. Joy's lips curled. And yet your lifestyle emissions are higher than the average American household, multiplied by 120. The audience murmured louder now. People were uncomfortable. One person near the front actually covered their mouth. Let me ask you something, Joy, Ford said, leaning forward now, eyes narrowed. How did you get to work today? What? Did you walk, bike, public transit? Or did you take your black SUV with the tinted windows and leather seats? Joy's mouth twitched, but she didn't respond. I'm not here to debate personal carbon footprints in a vacuum, Ford continued. If you want to talk systems, let's talk systems. But don't sit there and pretend you're cleaner because you drive to work instead of fly. You're deflecting, Joy said. No, I'm done playing defense, Ford snapped, because what you're doing right now, it's not journalism, it's a takedown. Whoopi tried to jump in. Okay, guys, maybe we pivot, but Ford and Behar weren't listening. They were locked in now. Too far in, there was no turning back. Joy turned to the audience. You see this? This is what happens when powerful men get asked real questions. They call it a takedown. The crowd was silent. Ford stood up, just a few inches, leaning against the edge of the desk, looming slightly. It was subtle, but primal. I've been on movie sets where people screamed in my face, he said. I've been in actual plane crashes. You think I'm scared of you? Joy stood up too. Clearly you're scared of being exposed. Exposed for what? Ford roared. For caring about something, for trying, even imperfectly, to use my platform for good. You use your platform to boost your image. Joy shot back. You want the praise without the sacrifice. The room was hot. Literally, one of the stage lights flickered. The PA on camera 3 whispered, "Do we cut to commercial?" No one responded, and then the folder. Joy slapped it on the desk. Inside flight logs, real estate holdings, foundation, budgets, all pulled from public record. All evidence she'd done her homework. Ford's eyes locked on the folder, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually lunge for it. You came here with a plan, he said. I came here with facts, Joy corrected. You just didn't expect someone to say them out loud. Ford's hands were now clenched at his sides. You think you're speaking truth to power, he said. You're just chasing a viral moment. That's all this is. Joy's reply was ice cold, and yet here you are, melting down. That line hit like a slap. The audience gasped. Someone actually said, "Oh my God," under their breath. Ford didn't blink, but the red was rising in his neck. Get the next question ready, he said. Looking at the producers off camera, we're not done. Joy said, You're damn right we're not, Ford replied, and then he sat back down. No one moved. The camera operators held steady. The director whispered, Keep rolling, and the view had just become the most explosive stage in America. The silence was glass-sharp. Ford didn't move, neither did Joy. They were two statues locked in a collision, only the tension between them alive, vibrating like a plucked wire across the stage. The folder still lay on the desk between them, pages fanned slightly, an open wound bleeding receipts in the form of flight logs and tax filings. The audience was holding its breath, unsure if they were still watching a morning talk show or something, else entirely something raw, unscripted, and deeply human unraveling before them. Whoopi Goldberg glanced off stage, lips parted as if to say something, but nothing came out. Ford finally broke the silence, his voice low, almost surgical. Know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? He didn't look at her, he looked at the folder. You spent days combing through that, didn't you? Pages of paperwork, hours of phone calls, all to try and land a punch on national television. Joy crossed her arms, chin lifted. It's called research. You're not the first guest to be asked uncomfortable questions. Ford's eyes flicked to her, sharp as broken glass. No, he said. But I might be the first one you tried to publicly crucify. Joy scoffed. Oh, please, you didn't come here for a conversation. You came here for blood. And then came the shift. The part that no one, not even Joy, saw coming. Ford leaned back in his chair, but his voice stayed low, controlled. Cold. "I have nothing to hide," he said, "but you do." The audience rustled audibly. Even the other co-hosts turned toward him now, heads whipping like sunflowers, toward a sudden beam of heat. Joy's face tensed, ever so slightly. "Excuse me," Ford folded his hands. "Do you really want to talk about carbon footprints? Or are we going to pretend the condo in the Hamptons doesn't count because it has bamboo floors?" Joy blinked. What are you talking about?" Ford's voice sharpened. "Your name is on the deed, Joy. Alongside your ex-husband's, you know the one who used to work for an oil lobbying firm." The studio shattered. Audiences gasped. Someone audibly whispered, "OS asterisk asterisk asterisk" under their breath. Whoopi physically recoiled. Joy's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Ford didn't stop. "Let's talk about that, Joy. The parties you hosted during the off-season, catered events with full generators, propane heaters running into the night. Your carbon footprint for one summer probably eclipsed mine for the year." She sputtered. "That was years ago. And so was some of my flying," Ford shot back. "But here we are." Joy's composure cracked. You could see it in the way she gripped her coffee mug, her knuckles white and trembling just slightly. "I'm not the guest here," she said, her voice thin with rage. "This isn't about me," no, Ford said, now with lethal clarity. "It's about your narrative, and the fact that you've built a career on calling others out while hiding behind your own selective truths." Security at the edge of the stage began to shift forward, slowly, uncertain if things were moving toward a physical escalation or not. Ford hadn't raised his voice. He didn't need to. The calm made it worse. Joy's lips trembled, now not with sadness, but fury. "I know hypocrisy when I see it," Ford said. Sonny leaned in, clearly trying to save the segment. "Maybe we steer this back to the film." "No," Joy snapped, eyes still locked on Ford. "Let's talk about it. You want to paint me as some kind of fraud? Go ahead. Then answer me this," Ford replied. "How many of your staff make minimum wage while you sit here lecturing others about economic justice?" That landed like a Molotov. Joy's face flushed so fast, it seemed to physically heat the air around her. "That's below the belt," she growled. "No," Ford said, his voice finally rising, not loud, but hard. "It's the same belt you've been swinging at me since I walked in here. You think you're holding me accountable? You're just trying to win a viral clip war. But you're not asking questions. You're throwing stones from inside a glass mansion." Joy stood up again. "You smug, arrogant," she started. But Goldberg cut in, finally slamming a hand on the desk. "ENOUGH. Whoopi barked. "Both of you." But it was too late. The beast had been unleashed. The moment had already spiraled. Joy whipped around to Whoopi, eyes wild. "You're going to defend him now?" "I'm trying to defend sanity, Joy," Goldberg yelled. "This was supposed to be a goddamn interview, not a trial." Ford turned to the crowd for the first time since the meltdown began, scanning their faces like an actor sizing up a jury. His voice softened. "And that was the most dangerous part of all. I came here because I thought this would be a place to have a conversation," he said. "But I see now that was naive." Joy's face was pure fury. "Then why don't you live?" He looked at her, long and slow. "Because I don't walk away from cheap shots," he said. "Not until they're exposed." And just when everyone thought the worst was over, Joy leaned across the desk, her voice a low growl. "Tell me something, Harrison. Did your foundation pay for those trip planting programs? Or did your production company funnel the funds and take the tax credits?" The blow landed. Even Ford froze. The audience let out a stunned gasp that seemed to suck the air from the room. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said quietly. "I have documents," Joy said, tapping the folder again. "You want to keep playing hero? Or do you want to admit you're not as clean as your PR team wants us to believe?" Ford stared at her. His jaw clenched. His hands curled slowly on the edge of the desk. "You have no idea the damage you're doing right now," he said to me, "to your own credibility, to the audience that trusted you to be better than this, and you had no problem doing damage every time you stepped into a G650 and posted an Instagram video about saving the oceans." Joy spat. It was a standoff. Not just reputations anymore. This was identity warfare, and no one in the studio could look away. Whoopi finally stood, stepping between them. "This is done," she said, her voice the final word in a room gone feral. "We're going to commercial." But no one moved, not even the camera crew. Ford turned, suddenly calm again. "To calm, I'll stay," he said, eyes locked on Joy. "If she apologizes—" Joy laughed a high, cold, disbelieving sound. "Apologize," she hissed. "You think I owe you an apology? You ambushed me," he said. "You turned a conversation into a courtroom, a moment of truth into a public beating. That's not journalism. That's a vendetta." Joy's face fell blank, masked. "I was doing my job." "No," he said. "You were settling a score." Joy tilted her head. "You're not worth that." And then, with venom in her eyes, she added, "You're just a washed-up actor trying to stay relevant by pretending you still matter." Ford blinked slowly. Then, with agonizing calm, he unhooked his mic again. "You just proved every point I've made," he said. He didn't stand up yet. He let the silence stretch. "Let it burn. Cut the feed," someone whispered off stage, but no one moved. Ford leaned forward one last time, close enough for his voice to carry into the overhead boom. "I came here to talk about a story. You turned it into a battle. And the thing about battles, Joy, nobody wins." And just as the commercial cue finally flashed red behind the cameras, just as the audience started murmuring louder, Ford stood up, but he didn't leave, not yet, because just off stage, someone was approaching a stagehand holding a phone. Whispers were exchanged, confused looks, and then the producer stepped in, eyes wide. "There's a call." "For Harrison," she whispered. Ford took the phone, listened. His face changed, slightly, but noticeably. He handed it back, turned to Joy and said, "Your research team missed something." Joy stiffened. Ford stepped forward closer to the desk, closer to her than he'd been all morning. "You wanted a moment. Here it comes." The studio lights hadn't dimmed, but it felt darker. Joy Behar was still standing behind the curved glass desk of the View, her knuckles pressed into the wood as if bracing for a wave. Across from her, Harrison Ford had just handed back a producer's phone with a calmness that felt almost threatening. That phone call, it had changed something. No one knew what yet, but everyone felt it. "I don't bluff, Joy," he said, voice gravel smooth. "You thought this was your takedown moment, but you're not the only one who did research." The live audience shifted in their seats, murmurs, throat clears, the rumble of collective unease. You could feel the eyes from every corner of America watching millions live. Sonny's voice cracked first. "Okay, I think we need to seriously consider whether." Ford raised one hand, quiet, controlled, and everyone stopped talking. The control room was silent. Even the co-hosts froze. Ford turned toward the camera, not for a performance, but for clarity. "You want transparency. Let's talk transparency." Joy scoffed, arms crossed. "Now, you don't know what you're about to walk into." "Neither did you," he replied. "But here we are." He reached into the inside pocket of his blazer, pulled out a folded document, creased but clearly fresh. "I didn't plan to use this," he said, "but since you brought receipts." He handed the page to Whoopi, who took it with visible hesitation. Her eyes darted down, froze, jaw tightened. "Is this?" she asked, almost whispering. Joy's voice came sharp. "If that's what I think it is, you better tread very carefully, Harrison." But Ford wasn't backing down now. "That," he said, "is a copy of the NDAs signed by your staffers from 2019. The same year, 3 of them quit, citing a toxic and retaliatory work environment." The gasp in the audience was visceral. Audible, it echoed like a gunshot. Joy's eyes widened just for a second. Then the masks slid back on. "You want to bring up disgruntled employees? Seriously." Ford stepped in closer. "You wanted to talk about hypocrisy. Let's talk about public image versus private behavior. You sit on this show calling out powerful men for creating toxic environments, but 3 women said working for you is hell." "Allegations that were completely dismissed," Joy snapped. Ford shook his head, slow. "They weren't dismissed. They were buried." Goldberg shot a glance to the wings. She was signaling now, hands twitching toward stage managers. This had spun too far, but no one moved, because no one knew what to do anymore. Joy slammed her palm on the desk. You're dredging up ancient garbage to avoid accountability for your own hypocrisy? No, Ford said, loud enough to silence the entire building. I'm showing that this was never about accountability. This was a hit job, and you're not clean enough to be swinging the hammer. Security Joy started to call out, her voice cracking, but Whoopi stepped between them. Sit down, she said to both of them. Her voice had never been sharper. Ford didn't move, and then an audience member stood up. She was in the third row, mid-30s, shaky voice. I interned here in 2020, she said, voice rising above the silence. Everything he said is true, gasps. Audible shock. Cameras jerked toward her. Producers scrambled, one running to cut her mic, but it was too late. Joy's face drained of color. I signed an NDA too, the woman said. But I broke down in therapy about what happened. You bullied your staff, you screamed at us off camera, you made jokes about our weight, and then you pretended to be a feminist on air. Ford didn't even react. He didn't have to. The bomb had detonated. I don't know who you are, Joy stammered. You're probably being paid by his team. Don't do that, Sonny said suddenly, voice laced with shame. Don't discredit a woman for speaking up. You've crucified others for less. Joy's lips parted, but nothing came out. Another voice from the audience, now older, male, angry. Let Harrison speak. Then another. She's dodging. Let him finish. The audience was turning. Joy could feel it. She looked to the co-hosts, but they wouldn't meet her gaze. Not this time. Ford remained still, watching, letting the silence do the work. You don't get to rewrite my story, Joy finally said, voice trembling with rage. You don't get to walk into my house and try to smear me. Ford leaned forward, the full weight of decades in his voice. I didn't walk into your house, he said. I was invited. You set this fire. I'm just making sure people see who struck the match. Joy's voice cracked. You smug son of a enough. Whoopi finally exploded, voice thunderous. This stops now. This isn't journalism. This isn't a talk show. This is a meltdown. Cameras were still rolling. Network execs were calling down to the control room. There was now a 12-second delay. Running on the broadcast, a delay that hadn't been used in years. Joy slumped into her chair, her arms crossed, face pale. Ford sat, but with the poise of a man who had endured war, real and metaphorical. A man who'd been hit, but was still standing, and then for the first time in 30 minutes, came silence. No shouts, no interruptions. Just the raw, humming, airless silence of a public unraveling. Ford finally turned back toward Joy. You think, this is about politics, or environmentalism, or celebrity hypocrisy, he asked. It's not, it's about honesty. I'm flawed, I admit it, but I've never pretended to be a saint. Joy said nothing. I've taken wrong turns, he continued, but I never threw a match and called it truth. Joy's lips were shaking now. I lost people, Ford said, voice dropping. Close friends, because I chose to speak up about things that mattered, and I knew the cost. What's your cost, Joy? A few bruised egos on staff. Or did you just never care who got hit on your way up the ratings ladder? Joy stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. You are not going to sit here, and the View's theme music began to play mid-broadcast. The control room was cutting her mic. The network was taking back control. Joy's mouth moved, but no one could hear her. Ford watched her with the quiet devastation of a man watching something once powerful collapse under its own weight. And then, in one of the most surreal moments in live television history, the feed cut to commercial, leaving millions of viewers screaming at their screens. As Harrison Ford and Joy Behar stood frozen in the standoff of a lifetime. The commercial break had ended, crew members walking around like something tragic had happened, and Joy Behar, sitting alone at the center of the table, pale hands folded tightly in front of her. Her voice wasn't live yet, but her face said everything. The audience hadn't returned. They'd been ushered out quietly, urgently, while the network figured out what to do. Harrison Ford wasn't there. He was gone. Gone in a way that felt permanent. Joy exhaled hard. It almost looked like a sigh of relief, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her. The camera slowly pushed in, closer, tighter, until it felt like the lens was crawling inside her. She didn't speak for nearly 10 seconds. Then, I was trying to do my job, she said softly. That's what I keep telling myself. She looked off camera, possibly at the producer, possibly at no one. But some part of me knew what I was doing today. I came in loaded. I came in wanting to prove something. A pause. It wasn't supposed to go like that. Stillness. Even the crew had stopped moving. "There's a line between holding someone accountable," she said, voice trembling, and publicly shaming them. "And today, I think I crossed that line." The control room whispered through the IFBs, "She's off script. Let her go. Don't cut." Backstage, a live feed showed Harrison Ford in the hallway, walking slowly, shoulders slightly slumped, not in defeat, but in the weight of what had just happened. He was standing near the freight elevator. His eyes told the story. "I didn't want this fight. No venom, just a slow, measured walk toward the edge of the stage." The floor camera followed her, unsure what she was doing. She paused at the lip of the stage and looked directly into the lens. Maybe I went too far. Maybe he did too. But what you saw today, that wasn't scripted. That wasn't some viral moment for clicks. That was two people clashing in real time, ego, principle, pride. All of it. Her voice cracked. "I've spent my career asking tough questions. I still believe in that. But I also believe in accountability, including my own." She reached up, removed her mic. "I need to step away for a while, and I don't know when or if I'll be back. But I owe it to this audience, and to myself, to figure out why I did what I did today." She laid the mic down, walked off, just like Ford had. And for the first time in daytime history, two legends had walked away from the same set within 10 minutes, one in righteous fury, the other in hollow reflection. Cut to black. 2 days later, CNN headlines. Joy Behar takes indefinite leave from The View after explosive. An air clash with Harrison Ford. ABC executives meet to discuss future of live interview format. Former intern who spoke out on air retains legal counsel. Harrison Ford breaks silence. There's a difference between journalism and ambush. Social media blew up at Just Call Me T. That was the wildest thing I've ever seen on daytime TV. My jaw's still on the floor. At Film Freak 900, Ford walked out like a legend. Didn't raise his voice, just dropped truth like a damn anvil. At Journalism Matters, we do need accountability in media. The View episode was a lesson for everyone. At Intern Justice Now, to the woman who spoke up from the audience, thank you. That took more courage than most of us will ever know. 3 days later, a letter from Harrison Ford, published in The Atlantic, _I've made mistakes. I've contradicted myself. I'm not proud of every choice I've made, but I've never claimed to be perfect. I only ever tried to care. What happened on that stage wasn't about me or Joy. It was about what happens when we stop listening and start performing outrage. I hope we can do better. Final scene. A week later, a quiet California morning. Ford walks through a redwood forest alone. No cameras, just him and the towering trees. He kneels near a newly planted sapling, digs his hands into the dirt, places it down gently. Sunlight filters through the canopy, birds chirp. A slow pullback shows a field rows upon rows of young trees. A private project. No press, no ribbon cutting, just a man trying to make good on his word as he stands, wiping sweat from his brow. He looks to the sky. A plane passes overhead. He squints, smiles faintly, then turns back to the earth, fade to black. Like, share, subscribe, but not for the drama. Do it because we need these stories, messy, real, human. Do it because sometimes the most important conversations happen when the cameras are rolling and no one knows what's going to happen next. Because this wasn't just an interview. This was a reckoning, and it won't be the last. Subscribe to stay part of the story. We're not done, not by a long shot. Let me know if you want a thumbnail title, tagline, or viral description for YouTube, or want this confrontation adapted for another celebrity pair.